Welcome into Unbreakable, a mental health podcast with Jay Glazer. And just a little reminder here for everybody, my book, Unbreakable, How I Turn My Depression, Anxiety, into Motivation You Can Too, comes out in paper book on April 1. And what we're trying to do here for mental health is give it words. Let us all have this conversation. The more we can give it words, the more we can talk about it, the more those of us with mental health issues or just battling the gray, or just trying to tame the roommates in our head, we don't feel like we're in the minority anymore. We feel like we're in the majority, which I think we are. And it spans, everywhere you could possibly go in this world. But it's also what made me successful. Overcoming these mental health issues is what made me where I am now, brought me where I am. It's also introduced me to some of the coolest people in the world. And one of those coolest people in the world is our guest this week. And it's incredible, the realm that this podcast dives into, from sports to acting to television hosts to cooking hosts like Guy Fieri to musicians. But we haven't had a designer on yet. We haven't had an actual gangster here in the fashion world come on with me yet. With that, I'm going to bring in a good friend of mine from a long time ago. We've been friends for ages from New York City. But now we have something else we bond with, which is mental health. And that is Kenneth Cole. How are you, brother?
I'm great, Jay. So if you do get a successful designer on the show someday, let me know.
So now here's what I want to dive into before I get to the Mental Health Coalition, because a lot of people don't know this about Kenneth. He does an awful lot on this front. He's a leader in what we're all trying to do here, because we are really behind with mental health. We're so far behind in how we're attacking this now. And again, people still are finding the words to try and open up. But I like to call this Mental Health and a Mental Wealth podcast. And I want to talk about your journey to where you got to, because for any of us who are successful, it's not rosy. It's not a rosy road to get there. There's no get rich quick scheme. We all kind of struggle through it to get to where we are. So give us, our listeners, what your kind of moment was and how you had to struggle through to get to where you are.
Yeah, well, first of all, I struggle with the term success, but I think that's kind of a very dangerous concept, but and it's very relative, and it's how you see yourself today is how others see you tomorrow, and it's a relationship often to other people. I'm doing great, and then all of a sudden I see people who maybe to have a different lens through which to look, and then maybe I have a whole different sense of things. But in any case, so that is said, it's been an extraordinary journey for me, and I'm in business for 40 years, and actually, what I'd like to say is that it sounds younger and cooler, is that this is our 20th anniversary of our 20th anniversary. And so, but it's been an extraordinary journey. And I set out to try to figure out how to kind of create something that people didn't have and that people could use, and that how to add something of substance, meaning to people's lives, and at the same time make it meaningful while we did it, only because of the way we did it. And I had a bunch of associates early on, and we were kind of a little scrappy, and we were trying to figure out how to kind of carve our place in a very competitive business and industry. And I knew that, first of all,
was shoes your first thing?
It was
just shoes. Okay,
women's shoes, and
women's shoes.
And I realized that you can't do this shit 40 hours a week. And at the end of the day, it's all about life compromises, because at the end of the day, you can't only work. You need to have a personal life, and you have to find a balance. And at the end of the day, it's so hard to find that balance, and that's been one of my struggles, because I tend to work hard and if I turn it off sometimes, I don't turn it back on as quickly, maybe. So what is that right balance? And it's so rare, and I find people who struggle with that, because maybe everything's working for them professionally, but personally, it's just not. Not that you've ever had that issue. And then sometimes it's working personally, but the professional part isn't in line. So that's this struggle. Okay, that's the struggle that I deal with, and a lot of people I know probably deal with it. And so my business is finding a balance. So I try to address, and I believe it's not just what's on people's bodies, but what's on their mind. And I think that you almost have to know what's on their mind in order to be able to address what's on their bodies, and at the end of the day, it couldn't be just what they stand in; it needed to be what they stood for. So, and how do you balance that? So, and I think they become ultimately interdependent, because absent of knowing, where they are mentally or where they are inside, it's hard to kind of assess what they are looking for. Other than that, so it's been an extraordinary journey. And I started in shoes, and I started this beginning of the business is actually an interesting story, but I'm going to save that later on. And then in order to relate to people early on, I started working on an HIV initiative, because that was a struggle that was pervasive in our industry, and it wasn't affecting me as much as it was so many other people around me. And I started doing some marketing, branding, and talking about the stigma around HIV, because as bad as it was, the biggest problem was, and I believe today more people died of the stigma of AIDS than from AIDS itself, because they couldn't talk about it, and they were reluctant to deal with it, and they would rather die from the disease rather than openly accept treatment and be open to resources. And so many people, unfortunately, were not, and did lose their lives. So I did that for a long time. I was chairman of AMFAR for 14 years, and we had a very profound difference in millions of people's lives. I know that. And we changed the way research was done. We changed the way people were able to talk about HIV and treat HIV and live with HIV. So, and then about, I don't know, 4 years ago, I kind of stepped back from that for a whole myriad of reasons. And then my kids kind of were fascinated and obsessed with mental health, mental wellness, and so I somehow I refocused a lot of my resources there, and we set up an initiative. My daughter Amanda actually was working with us in our HR department, and we set up a program with NAMI on mental health awareness within the organization, and I felt it was changing the culture of the business and of the company, and I said to them, they wanted me to somehow work on a perception campaign, and I was reluctant to do it because this is so big, and I've come to realize, you said that many of us have mental health struggles. I don't, and the WHO says it's 1 in 4. I say it's 4
more than that.
It's 4 and 4.
Absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
Everyone. Because if it isn't you, it's somebody you love, somebody in the family, in the community, the workplace. And if you didn't have it before COVID, you definitely have it now.
And social media is terrible. It makes you think your life sucks because you're comparing yourself to everybody else's filtered fraction of a second, or you're seeing bullying online. We're all going through something, or like it's affecting somebody we know. I agree. It's 4 out of 4.
Yeah. So we're all struggling with it. So then I said, this is such a big undertaking. And then the problem is that 2/3 of those who struggle with it do so in the proverbial shadows, because there isn't a mechanism to talk about it that isn't stigmatized and that isn't diminishing. And so how do you're not going to, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy unless you have a mechanism to talk about it. So the goal was, can we rebrand, come up with a new narrative, empower people with the tools to talk about their well-being? Massive undertaking, probably absurdly ambitious. And
this is the Mental Health Coalition, right?
So then I formed the Mental Health Coalition, and with a few friends. And then NAMI says,
we're going to dive into it now, but you deflected my other question about the early days years, because I'm going to go back to it. I'm not going to let you off the hook. All right, but let's get into right now the Mental Health Coalition. Absolutely, because I think it's amazing.
All right, so we bring together all the mental health service providers in the country, and we said to every one of them, would you support us in this effort to address stigma and shine a light on your great work and create a shared platform? And every one of them said we're in. So now all of a sudden we've got the largest coalition of service providers, of mental health service providers in the country, maybe arguably everywhere. And now we're connecting needs to resources and working with tech companies, and we're making a profound difference in people's lives and giving people, attaching people to resources, because tech, as much as we know, these tech companies have created issues in many ways. They've been the most reliable and available resource for so many people, especially during quarantine. Mm-hmm. And you were able to find community, you were able to connect with people you couldn't have otherwise. And and these people with the best of intentions, they're struggling and they know they're part of the problem and they also want to be part of the solution. So, and
is it for everybody? Does it help everybody? Like how do people get help by the Mental Health Coalition?
So it's, you can log on and we can connect you to resources. You go to our website, you go to our Instagram page, you can go to, and you can see some of the tools that are available to people. Right. So this is going to grow exponentially as we can talk a little bit about that as we go forward. So, and it's been it's been an interesting journey. But business is, business is what empowers, enables, and supports everything I do. I love the fashion business. And
same with me with football. Absolutely. It opens up these doors and allows me to talk about this to a broader audience. Absolutely.
Right. And
the vehicle.
And I do think that the fashion business has given me a platform to, and as to your point, football has given you that. And also fashion is it's the perception business. I feel like I'm in the perception business and I'm addressing, kind of what's on your mind. I'm hopefully empowering it, maybe guiding it or inspiring it. And that is what I've come to realize is a powerful tool that's so much bigger than fashion. And so the reason I've been able to bring all these people together is because I'm not a threat to any of them. I'm not in the mental health. I'm not in the public health business. I'm not a psychiatrist. Right. I'm not a doctor, but I am in the. I have the ability, and I'm offering people a platform where I can promote and elevate and shine a light on all that great work. So and then create, by nature of aggregating all this great content and individuals, and we create something so much bigger than it is independently. So it's been very rewarding, and I'm still not telling you about my shoe business, my fashion business.
I'm going to get there in a second because I want to dive a little more here, but I can see your passion for it also. First of all, this is you being of service. And when you read Unbreakable, right, it's one of my pillars of being of service helps us through the gray. But you find different ways to be of service, through the years. This one you seem to have a great passion for as well. What did that come from your own issues, or did it just come from saying, man, I'm seeing how much the world is starting to struggle and I know I can make a difference here? Or both?
It's when we started doing this, first we launched, actually Katie, my other daughter, launched it and with us together a platform, How Are You, which asks the most asked question everywhere in the world, every day of the week in every language, and the one most rarely ever answered, which is how are you really? And challenging and inviting people to engage with that. And that was the one I did with Kendall Jenner on Michael's show. One more, we launched the initiative, the challenge, and 200 million people engaged with it the first weekend.
Wow. And
then we did another campaign with Meta a year or so later, inviting people to do these lives, one-to-ones. And we called it Every Day in May. And I worked with Oprah and her production team. And we had hundreds of millions of people engaged. And we hopefully, and many athletes, by the way, because guys struggle with this so much more than women do. It's so much harder for us to be vulnerable, which is so critical, and at the same time empathetic. So this process kind of inspires, encourages, and promotes and rewards that which was and Michael kicked that off. I think, I don't know. Right. I spoke with Michael on it. I don't remember who I spoke with, but Michael was part of it. So so we've used the platform to the degree that we can to give voice to the subject. So as I was saying, guys struggle.
Right. And where did your passion come from? Is it your own struggle, or is it just seeing everybody around you?
Oh, so as we're doing this, so then someone said, "So what is your mental health story?" And I said, I don't know. I have to. And all of a sudden I started thinking about it, and I realized that, I've been in a perpetual fog for several years now. I mean, certainly before COVID and since COVID. And then I realized that there's all these struggles independently that, that I have, and I manifest, and I contextualize, and I deal with them, and I've just learned how to deal with them. We all do that in our own way, and sometimes I just work harder, and I dive too much into this, and I'm not mentally present enough for other places where I wish I could be and should be, but and the more present and aware I am of myself, the more I'm aware of everybody around me, and I'm a better employer, friend, um, uh, parent, and so which is what I so desperately always want to be, and we never quite get there, and we never quite find that ultimate balance, but we're always working on it.
Yeah, because look, the secret to go back to that word success, but I guess business success is outworking the world, not by a little, by a lot. And there's a lot of things that end up getting sacrificed. And you've seen me, right? We've been out and I'm just on that phone looking down and not present with anybody, and kind of what it takes to be an insider, to outwork the world. And I think same for you also. It's what it takes is just outworking the world by, not by 2 hours, but by a ton. And that's sacrifice.
Yeah. So so we have to commit ourselves wholeheartedly. And so how do you do that? And what I've done that with my business anyway is I've made purpose part of the business model. And so, and
I like that.
I do think they need, people used to say to me, well, you're running a public company, and is that appropriate to be allocating, public company resources to social good? And my answer was always that not only are those efforts not independent, I believe they're interdependent, and they are mutually reliant upon each other, and they're the proverbial hand that feeds each other, and that and it's what I've always done, and I was that way before I went public, and I've been that way ever since I went public, and I think every company gets there. Every company in America gets there. If their balance sheet, if their hearts don't get them there, their balance sheet does, and hopefully it's the former. But we all get there because it's the right place to be, and I don't think it's the destination. I think it's the journey, and it makes the destination that much more rewarding if we do it right.
Yeah, I love that. I always appreciate the toil of the climb. I never knew I'd beat Jay Glazer on the NFL and Fox. So early on, when I was making $9,400 a year for those 11 years, those first 11 years I was doing it, making $9,400 a year, with Michael driving me back to New York City every day from Giant Stadium because I couldn't afford bus and subway fare. It's just it's different here between the years during that time, and it's interesting also during that time. I try and figure out whether I'm happier now that I've quote unquote made it, or whether I was happier then when I didn't have anything to lose.
It's a good question. And, look, after 40 years, I'm very quick to tell people that I feel in that period of time, we've built an extraordinary foundation from which we can now build a business, an even better business. And if I'm going to spend a lot of time reflecting, looking in the mirror, it's like driving a car. I'm going to get thrown off by that first bump in the road. But if you just got to stay focused on
that's great advice.
So, and I'm not sure you ever get there. And again, maybe to that point, I believe that all my years of doing this shit, that I have earned a right to be considered, but every day I have to earn the right to be chosen. And and that is no easy task, but that's what makes the fashion business so energizing and rewarding. And you can never take it for granted. And if you do, I'm likely to be a broadcaster for the NFL. I'll be looking for to be your assistant.
I don't pay enough.